As Nick Cleveland Stout and Joseph Bouchard laid out in an excellent report in Responsible Statecraft last week, the battle in D.C. is largely taking place between ExxonMobil and Chevron. Exxon discovered the reservoir off the coast of Guyana and has led the exploration and extraction efforts since drilling began in 2019 under the authority of the Guyanese government. However, Exxon pulled all its operations out of Venezuela back in 2007 due to new government regulations. So the company higher-ups obviously see any possibility that control over the oil deposit could switch from the Guyanese to the Venezuelan government as a threat to their current setup. Chevron, on the other hand, has consistently sought to engage with the Venezuelan government to maintain its access to the world's most oil-rich territory. It's on much friendlier terms and is well positioned to potentially benefit from a partial or total Venezuelan takeover of the oil fields if Exxon is still unhappy with Maduro's terms. So, as Bouchard and Cleveland Stout demonstrated, in the decades since the reservoir was discovered, both Exxon and Chevron have poured millions of dollars into foreign policy-focused think tanks in D.C. to try to swing the policy debate over Venezuela in their favor. Think tanks that get more funding from Exxon are pushing for a maximum pressure campaign against the Maduro regime and for Washington to give Exxon and the Guyanese government what is essentially a war guarantee, that the U.S. will go to war with Venezuela if there is any encroachment on the Essequibo region or the offshore oil fields. Meanwhile, think tanks that get more funding from Chevron tend to be less hawkish on Venezuela, more understanding of Venezuela's historical claim on the disputed region, and more willing to point out that Chevron's deal with the Venezuelan government would mean that oil would continue to flow into the American market if Maduro took it over. As the two authors put it, there is, quote, a common refrain among hawks that experts who are not sufficiently hawkish on Venezuela are deemed to be shills for Chevron, end quote. But the same could easily be said about the hawks themselves, since many of them are taking Exxon money and arguing that the U.S. should be ready to go to war to ensure that Exxon is the company that gets to sell the oil coming from this deposit. That is the major dynamic driving Washington's interest in the Venezuelan-Guyanese territorial dispute. What's happening right now is simply the latest flare-up of these tensions. The last big one happened in 2023 when Biden was in office.